Okay. Hi, I'm Lee Patterson, and I'm Sherry Patterson's husband and also caregiver during her time through her liver disease and liver transplant. And
And my name is Maurice Patterson. I am Lee's brother, um, her brother-in-law, and I was also a caregiver for her during her liver transplant pre and post.
yes. So we want to talk to you a little bit about the hospice care experience. Um, from what I can remember, I think I would say that they were in for sure by August of 2021. And at that time, we had just come out of palliative care, which was the same place. I think it was called Spirit. Um, I don't remember the name of
I don't remember
the.
either.
I don't think that's what we really here to talk about is that actual experience with hospice care. Um, and I don't think either one of us had the experience of hospice care up until this point. Um, but we're in the midst of COVID. She's getting worse. She's not doing any better.
No.
At this point, most of her organs started to fail. She was on she was doing self-cath at this point when we went on hospice care, and we were also doing her IV. And I think the IV at that point was in her chest, not her arm, right?
Yes.
And we had the first hospice nurse that came, I believe, was Brooke, and she kind of walked us through what we would have to do because she needed to be given IV fluids every day. And usually it was a bag and a half.
Yeah.
And, at first we're thinking, okay, well, they're going to come every day and do this. And that's not how that worked.
So what we basically did is we took a video of her doing it so we could look at the process every single day. At that point, we didn't know we were going to do it every day, but I'm glad we videotaped it because it really showed us kind of what we do and the steps.
That meant everything. I mean, from cleaning her line, because
Yes.
we didn't realize how important that is. That meant we had to flush out the line. There were other things that we were doing. We were administering her drugs as well.
Yes.
At that point, when hospice came in, they were prescribing tramadol and I believe morphine. There were several different kinds, and those were a part of what we were supposed to be doing. But we kind of left that up to them because we didn't feel comfortable administering that. But I think Brooke lasted what we saw her 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then
It's about 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
that was it. We didn't see.
Yeah.
They we kept calling and calling to find out when somebody was coming, and they said, well, we'll get somebody out there, and it was like nonchalant, but it was the same. It was very frustrating.
It was very casual too. It wasn't
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't.
it wasn't like, oh, we're not going to be out there. Like they weren't out there, so we were kind of on our own for what felt like a very long time. And when you have someone that you feel is pretty much dying every day, it's very frustrating to see that come to fruition because you're not sure what to do. The only thing you can do is, if something goes wrong, is call 911, which is that was our last resort. It was the last resort that we could do in that particular situation, especially when the medications were doing certain things to her, like making her sleep longer.
I mean, it was a constant check on whether she was breathing or not.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Yeah.
And then when her pain level would go up, we pretty much felt like we were on an island all by ourselves. And then we had, of course, Pastor. We did have a chaplain who kept coming. He would come once a week, I think.
Yeah.
And his talks were, I guess I get it. This is hospice care, so they're going to be telling us, to prepare for what's coming. And, are you ready? Do you feel like you've said your goodbyes? Do you feel like the kind of questions was being asked in the midst of everything that I think in a daily thing that we were going through just didn't match. It seemed, especially she had hepatic encephalopathy. And if you don't know what that is, when you have liver disease, your ammonia level starts to spike and goes to your brain. And it causes bouts of rage, um, constant memory loss, um, sometimes sleeping, sometimes insomnia, sometimes there were other things that I believe were going on along with what she was already going through with the liver disease, which was constant vomiting, constant.
Yes.
Um, she couldn't go to the bathroom sometimes. Drinking any kind of fluids usually came back up. Any kind of food came back up. I mean, it wasn't, we were watching her die. And, it was like in between the times that hospice would be there, it seemed like they would just pop in for a checklist and then that was it.
Yeah, there was no, the only word I could use is there was no consistency with it. And with what she was going through, we needed consistency.
No.
Between him working and me watching her, we were just kind of confused and weren't really sure at times what to do. Sometimes she would forget who I was. And sometimes that was pretty frustrating for me because I was trying to help her, and her not knowing who I was at certain times really could be troubling at times. Because she would wake up and she, who are you? And whatnot, or there are times she would call me Lee, and so there are just times where we just didn't know what to do or how to handle certain things, and see, that's kind of what I was hoping the pastor that came to help us with emotionally, and it just seemed like that wasn't happening. What I thought I was going to get from him was maybe not more medical, but more emotional, dealing with how to deal with the things that she was going with towards us. And
Right.
that's really was a really frustrating thing to go through, to not know how to feel at certain times. It was more of kind of, how do you feel about her not being in your life? And we were thinking of, we want to deal with how we feel with her being in our life.
Right now, because
Yes.
you're here once a week for maybe 30 minutes. And I think what we started to realize more and more, I mean, that was August, September. By the time end of September came, we really realized that hospice care knew nothing about hepatic encephalopathy. They knew very little about what liver disease as a whole does to a person or does to a caregiver who's there for that person. In this case, I guess hospice care, um, I'm not even sure why they were there. I mean, I get it. We're in the middle of a pandemic and we couldn't admit her into a hospital. But even in a hospital, I mean, there were already nurse shortages and hospitals were fluctuating in and out of capacity. But home hospice care, home health care really kind of failed us, I felt. But at the same time, all our goal was to get her to the transplant. We weren't ever prepared to let her go.
Yeah,
So
and it seemed like they were more focused on, you know, what it was going to be like after.
Right.
And we were dealing with more of, how do we keep her this way? How do we keep her alive? And it seemed like between me, Lee, and her son Cameron, we were the only ones feeling that way. And once again, I know I use the word frustrating a lot, but that's pretty much what it was. There were people that will ask me, did you think that she was, going to live? And my answer to that question was usually no, only because I saw what she was going through every single day. And so I thought, if she doesn't get this liver soon, with all the dealing with the hospital and even dealing with hospice, then this isn't going to happen. So people are usually pretty surprised when I give that answer, but unless you're in a room with her every single day, you don't know. We'd have the nurses come in and, she'd throw up 3 or 4 times, or act a certain way, and they were surprised. And they would say to me, hey, does this happen often? I said, it happens every single day. This is not something that happens
Mm.
once a week or twice a week.
No.
This is something we deal with
every day.
every day.
It was every day.
Yeah.
And it was bile, and it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I mean, because she had no liver to flush out toxins, so it's going to find another way to come out. And, you know, the way that it was, I think, treated was, okay, is there, you know, they tried everything and give it to them. They just prescribed more medication, but the medication wasn't what we were going through. It really just didn't.
Yeah, and even the Skypes that she had with her doctors were frustrating to look at.
Yeah,
because it
or
didn't
listen to.
It
Even
didn't
for that
or
matter.
listen to because it didn't even seem like they were really. And I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that it was very kind of blasé. It was very casual, and we weren't. We were trying to stay casual, but inside it was really hard because we knew that if she didn't get this, that it wasn't going to last very long for her.
And it always seemed like it wasn't going. I mean, there were, I don't know how many nights that it was that I would just wake up just to make sure she was still breathing, or if she moved in the bed a certain way, I was up. There was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could say. And, you know, when you have support that comes from the outside in like that, you would hope that they would get that. But it didn't feel like that. It didn't
No.
feel like that to me.
And the thing that I've kind of had to come to grips with was that, you know, my bedroom was down the hall from theirs, and so every morning I would wake up, and not knowing if she, you know, passed away at the night or anything like that. So the best part of my morning, every single morning of going through this hospice or even or other, was hearing her voice downstairs making dinner or making breakfast or whatnot, because then I knew that she was okay. And when you deal with that every single day, it's going to affect you for a very long time. It still does to this day.
Right.
That, you know, that I know that she's okay, and that she can be, you know, the person that we know that she is. So to not see, you know, Sherry the way she is or the way she has been was very, very hard. And explaining that to the nurses, it just sometimes it didn't feel like that was
Like they even knew what
like
we were
that was
talking about.
like it was coming through. Like she would
Right.
have glimpses of it, glimpses of Sherry, and then it would go away. And a lot of times, you know, she would spark up when the nurses would come, and then when they left, she would be back to, you know,
Sometimes
the
worse.
way she was. And so, you know, a lot of times the nurses didn't, if they didn't see it, they didn't know it. Most people that walked in the house didn't really realize how bad it was until they stayed for a while. If they stayed for half an hour, then they weren't going to see anything. But if they stayed for hours, then they realized what we saw, which is how she felt, whether she was throwing up, you know, whether she had to get up, you know, slurring of her speech, her not being able to use her phone.
Her memory loss.
Yeah, her memory loss, or calling somebody a different name or whatnot. So, you know, that was hard as well. So
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap this up, you know, at first hospice said we're going to be here 3 times a week. We never saw that, I don't think. I think maybe
No.
we saw them once, and we're talking in a 4-month period where they were supposed to come 3 times a week. I would probably tell you we probably saw them a total of 8 times.
yeah, I was going to say, but probably between 8 and 10.
In 4 months, 8 times is what we saw of hospice care.
And a lot of times when they come in, they're there for maybe a half an hour or maybe 45 minutes, and then they're gone.
Yep.
You know, they take her vitals, they ask her a couple of questions with a checklist, and then they're gone.
They're
so
gone.
it seemed like she was more of a number than anything else.
And sometimes they were on their phone
Oh,
while
yeah.
they were there.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't even like they were there really, you know, it was not even really to assess as much as it was to sign off on something and say, okay, yeah, you know, she's, you know, going to be passing. And it was like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
You know, we get it, but there's fight. You know, I guess when you see a fight in somebody that you know they don't want to go and they're gonna hang on, and I mean, the fact that she was perking up around medical people said that there was still some hope in her, but it was like it became few and far between,
Yeah.
especially with hepatic encephalopathy. But we wanted to come on today and at least give you this part. We'll probably be contributing some more to this particular type of journal that we're going to be placing here. So maybe there could be something done. I believe that there could be more that should be known about hepatic encephalopathy and liver disease, and a lot of the ways that, you know, that the caregiver's going, some of the things the caregiver's going to go through. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.